Hey, what is up, y'all? Welcome to the Chill Room Podcast. On today's show, we'll be covering some interesting ideas with the hero's journey concerning the new Joker movie. A little bit of background on the movie. It released December 17, 2019, sparking a lot of controversy and traction over its genre-bending version of the iconic character Joker. The movie touches on a couple of interesting topics, such as mental illness and rich versus poor, which take on most of the film's focus. As a general background for those who haven't seen the movie or need a refresher, the movie is about a mentally ill character named Arthur and his descent into madness because of the world around him. With that, let's jump into the movie and how his story fits into the hero's journey template. So we're going to go ahead and start with the beginning of the hero's journey, which is the ordinary world. In the beginning of the movie, the main character Arthur lives in Gotham City, which is struggling currently with a major trash problem throughout the city. Not to mention growing tensions between the rich and poor for a struggle of power. Arthur is a clown and wants to be a comedian with dreams of making the world around him laugh. He lives and cares for his mentally ill mother, and Arthur himself suffers from a compulsive laughing disorder. Because of the disorder, he feels isolated and ignored from those around him. A very wealthy Thomas Wayne at the time is running for city mayor and is looking to save the city. Someone Arthur's mom writes to frequently, which is unknown for reasons in the beginning. And not to mention the very popular Murray Show is at its peak performance with the show's host Murray, a comedian, someone who Arthur idolizes. So after knowing his ordinary world, where he does for a daily basis, from here we move on to the call of action, which is presented very early on in the movie, maybe like 10-15 minutes in. This moment is when Arthur's co-worker, Randy, gives him a gun after hearing about Arthur being beat up during a job. Randy tells Arthur to take the gun so he can protect himself. At this point, Randy's motives are unknown since it's very early on. At first, Arthur denies to take the gun, telling Randy that as a mentally ill person he's not supposed to have one, or to be in serious trouble, but then later accepts the gun after hearing Randy out. This is a call to action because the moment changes Arthur's ordinary world into the beginning of his descent into madness. Now, he has not fully crossed leaving the ordinary world, but it's beginning. So soon after, we are introduced to Arthur's mentor, which is a little tricky to define in this movie, but I'm going to do it how I see it. So one day after work, Arthur bumps into Sophie, who lives on the hall with her daughter Gigi. After exchanging a few gestures and words, they go back to what they were doing, but Arthur takes interest into Sophie and begins to follow her around the city, where she works, and where Gigi even goes to school. So at this point, Arthur has become a full-on stalker, but the movie depicts Sophie taking it very lightly and not really caring. But this, however, is not true, and only a part of Arthur's imagination. We learn later in the film that Arthur had made this all up in his head, which in a way of his own idea of coping with the wrongs he had done. So knowing this, we are to assume that the mentor is himself, as it is his bipolar personality guides him through the adventure. This will be, him meeting the mentor, which is a part of the hero's template. With this, the viewers begin to witness the crossing of the first threshold. So this is when he leaves the ordinary world. This is the moment when at this point in the film, Arthur's been fired from his clown job for taking a gun into a children's hospital and is on a train back home. While on a seemingly empty train, an unknown woman and three unknown men enter the train. The three men begin to harass the woman, showing signs of potential sexual assault. While this is going on, Arthur begins to laugh hysterically, which angers the three men, allowing the women to escape. From there, the men proceed to beat up Arthur, but he pulls out the gun he had from the children's hospital and kills them all. Although the three men might seem insignificant, what's so significant is they were part of the elite, 3 Wall Street men who worked for Thomas Wayne. So these killings sparked outrage and anger in the wealthy, but actually gained support from the lower class, as they saw maybe this is 3 less rich people in the world. What else is better? These scenes have symbolized Arthur entering the world of adventure and officially leaving the ordinary world with no going back. So the journey has truly begun for Arthur as he officially crosses the threshold of the ordinary world. Before coming to the final challenge or end of his journey, Arthur must face a few enemies and tests along the way. First being meeting Thomas Wayne, in which Arthur is punched in the face by Thomas Wayne after a little altercation. From this meeting, he yearns to find the truth from his past and begins to seek the records of his mother during her time at the psychiatric ward because he did not know much about her. After finding out the truth about his past trauma and abuse from his mother, he goes to the hospital where she is currently staying and proceeds to kill her. This is another test, of course. One of the more important tests is that Arthur also leaves his bipolar mentor, Sophie, or his other side of his imagination, and plunges deeper into what he sees as freedom from society. One side test would be when Arthur kills Randy, who had been the reason why he was fired. Not super important to the story, but another side, type of quest or something like that. During all these tests, there are a few enemies, which are Thomas Wayne, the cops, Murray the Elite, and his mom. Some of the allies are his bipolar personality, and everyone who acknowledges his killings of the three men as a revolt against the upper elite. So, Arthur seeing Murray as an enemy is actually very important. We're about to go into this. At this point, Arthur begins his approach to the inmost cave, which will be the biggest challenge yet. This will be when Arthur is invited onto the Murray Show after an episode featuring a clip of Arthur doing stand-up comedy skyrockets in views. Arthur sees Murray as the biggest enemy for someone like him, since Murray used his comedy to ridicule Arthur. So inviting him on the show is an approach to the final cave, since it's what Arthur has wanted to do since the beginning of the show, or beginning of the movie. Arthur is finally getting a chance to be on the show and show Murray that he's something more than what he's portrayed on and from the previous episode. With the arrival to the inmost cave, Arthur now faces the ordeal, or what he fears most. In this moment would be Murray himself, a successful comedian who Arthur once wanted to be, but now realizes that he doesn't want to be that. Who once again has brought him onto the show to make fun of him, and mid interview, this becomes prominent to Arthur. During this moment, Arthur finally takes control of himself and his emotions, and casts away his unsure self. Arthur begins to rant about the wrongs of society and proceeds to shoot and kill Murray. This is the ordeal because Arthur is facing his biggest fear, Murray, and finally taking control of his feelings about the world around him, essentially becoming reborn as a new Arthur, or the Joker. After the ordeal with Murray, Arthur finally gains the reward from the hero's journey, which is acknowledgement. Arthur is escorted by the police but is freed by one of his people that believes in his movement. It is in this moment Arthur finally feels acknowledged by someone other than him, someone that is there to help him or help him. It isn't in this world, right? No one cares about his disorder or his background in the moment. They are just there for the movement and what he represents. Arthur has gained what he's always wanted: happiness and acknowledgement and freedom. This is his reward because this is what he has gained from the conquest of journey, because the film clearly shows Arthur / Joker being happy and enjoying himself for the first time in the whole movie. After Arthur, or now known as Joker, has realized and has been given his reward, he has begun the process to the road back to the ordinary world. In the film, we do not see any consent or choice to return to the ordinary world, but we do see Arthur in a psychiatric ward, so this is us assuming he has returned back to, normal life. This is a symbolization of Arthur now returned to the ordinary world as a mentally ill patient. This will be the road back, as it is literally Arthur returning to the ordinary world as a psychiatric patient and no longer the Joker. Following or during the road back to the ordinary world, Arthur goes through the resurrection, as he has now been reborn into the new Arthur, or the Joker. Arthur has now accepted himself and his role in society and has now elevated himself above his disorder. He now understands that he has power in this world and he can be acknowledged by many people, not for ridicule but for support in him. Arthur is now self-aware and conscious of his power in society, as when being interviewed by what seems to be a doctor in the psychiatric ward, the doctor asks, "What's so funny?" Arthur's response is simply, "You wouldn't get it." This is important because it's showing Arthur, he's conscious that as maybe you might not get it, but I get it, so it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me. The resurrection of Arthur has made him become reborn into a conscious human being. Arthur has now control over himself, and he now thinks and is no longer defined by his disorder. Arthur is truly happy now, to the point where he doesn't even care what people think. And finally, we come to the very end of the hero's journey, which is the return of the elixir. Arthur has changed Gotham in the fact that the poor people, or lower class, have revolted and taking over for themselves. Arthur has led this movement, which eventually leads to the death of Bruce Wayne's parents being killed. Ironic. Not to mention, Arthur is now back into the normal world, but this time he has control over his emotions and thoughts. In a sense, he can do whatever he wants now without being brought down by depression or disorder. 10:04. Woo! 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 Shit. Is that on camera?